And now let's head to New Jersey, where Governor Christie's administration is settling Exxon lawsuits filed way back in 2004 for $250 million. Now, that might sound like a good deal. Well, read the fine print. The lawsuit filed by the Department of Environmental Protection. It was surrounding contamination and loss of more than 1,500 acres, marshes, wetlands, waters, meadows, all throughout northern Jersey. New Jersey Senate President Steve Sweeney and State Senator Ray Lesniak plan to challenge the government's settlement in court. Lesniak called the settlement grossly inadequate. Sweeney stating, when we learned the administration planned to accept the equivalent of 3 cents on the dollar for the extensive damage to the environment, we decided to intervene to stop them and to protect the state's interests. And in a joint statement, both Sweeney and Lesniak said the agreement would sell us short by failing to make up for the harm to natural resources and the threat to the public's health. It would let Exxon off the hook when they've apparently been held responsible. And Doug, we were talking about they were on the hook for $7 billion. Okay, now you've handled some high-profile cases. Explain how the math works, because everybody knew they weren't going to see, close to $10 billion. But nonetheless, taking what seems, as they said, 3 cents on a dollar, people are like, wait a minute. Twice the governor's office asked them to hold off the court with a ruling here because they were still in settlement talks. Even if it took longer, couldn't they have gotten more?
Well, they could have gotten more, but that's the important part of this story, that there's a judge who listened to an entire trial, who considered close to $10 billion in damages, and he also considered the fact that the other side, Exxon, was saying that the damages were conceptual and that this is something that the state actually encouraged them to do, to set up a business there. I mean, so he has two sides to consider. Now, they asked him twice to hold back his decision because both sides are considering the strengths and the weaknesses of not only their case, but the other side case. So now, New Jersey is actually saying to themselves, okay, $250 million, that's certainty in their case. They'll take that and they'll take the money. When they could actually get a decision that's much lower. Of course, they could get a decision that's much higher also. And that's the gamble that both sides are playing. There
seemed to be a consensus. They were going to be getting a lot more than $250. But I guess my question is, historically, when you look at these cases, how long can the appeals get dragged out for?
Forever.
Yeah.
Forever. Yeah. I mean, a case like this worth billions. I mean, it could go on and on and on. It could get set back again for another trial. So they are looking for certainty.
But can't that, when you have a case like this, Doug, and maybe this is naive of me, but can't they just fast track it to say, okay, you've had 2 bites at the apple already, right? We're going to move this thing along. We're not going to drag this out for the next 50 years. There's real environmental concerns. There's real cleanup concerns here. They need to be made, if not whole here, at least get some of the funds in place. Why is it so hard to get a decision? I know the way the appellate process works, but still, it seems, I don't know, counterintuitive that if they get found guilty once, found guilty twice here, why should they be able to drag it out 5, 10 more years?
It's due process. I mean, both sides are entitled to due process, to go through the steps they deem necessary to get justice from the courts. So there's
but don't you need to have a compelling reason to have the case reheard by a higher court, that there wasn't any, that there's a compelling reason that it needs to be reheard? I mean, nobody debates that they did the damage to the environment. Nobody. I understand there's a debate as to what the role of the state was at the time, but nonetheless, there's major harm that was done. I just don't understand, I guess, and I think I speak for a lot of people at home, if the facts and evidence aren't in question, why should there have to be 5 different cases?
Well, if the harm was still continuing to this day, if they were still polluting and damaging wetlands, well, then there would be a compelling reason to step in and shut down what's going on. From this case, it appears the damage has already been done, and now they're deciding how much money, if any, will fix the problem. So fast-tracking it would be just a resolution of the case, how much money is owed or not owed. That's what we're talking about here.
Finally, there's also been questions, as always, politics involved. The governor, the governor wanted to get this done because if there was a settlement rather than a case, he could take some of the money and apply it to the state deficit, rather than if it was a formal decision and then the monies would have been appropriated for the cleanup entirely. Does that sometimes come into play, like in this particular case, where people want to use the money for different things?
I'm not a politician, but I guess those things
always
come into play. And I don't play on TV. But you got to listen. If he's shorting the state a lot of money, I don't think that's good for politics either.
And certainly politics and Chris Christie have been going hand in hand for going on 5 years now. All right, Jimmy. The next one, I think every dad out there and all we can relate here is that Curt Schilling, certainly not one of my all-time favorites here as a Yankee fan, but nonetheless, I found myself cheering for the old Red Sox because he took on cyberbullies who made explicitly sexual remarks, violent ones too, about his daughter online. Now the statements, they referred to rape and other forms of sexual violence to his daughter, so graphic I can't even do one of them. That's how bad they were. Schilling, he took to Twitter, this is how the story started, to congratulate his daughter. She made the Salve Regina Seahawks softball team, that's a college in Rhode Island. That's when the two men from New Jersey began texting and tweeting, the sexually explicit remarks about Schilling's daughter. Schilling responded to some of the tweets, basically asked them to cut it. They didn't. And then he posted screenshots of them on his blog where he said, I was a jock my whole life. I played sports my whole life, baseball since I was 5 till I retired at 41. I know clubhouses, lived in a dorm, I get it. Guys are going to be guys. Guys will say dumb crap often, but I can't ever remember drunk in a clubhouse with best of friends with anyone ever speaking like this to someone. So
That's
Jimmy,
nonsense. You can imagine what was going on in the clubhouse with that guy. He just might not have put it online.
Jimmy, enough from the peanut gallery. Here's my question. It's interesting. When it came out, instinctively, just about everybody said, good, those guys deserve it. And some of the stuff, when you read, it's just horrific. One of the guys who's selling tickets for the Yankees, and a bitter Met fan in the corner will say, see, I figured, he was immediately summarily dismissed. Another guy fired at a college station. Should people lose their employment if they say stupid things online?
When people behave in...
If they don't do it from their workplace and they do it from their private home, does free speech even carry and have limits even from your own basement?
They're employees at will. They're putting themselves out there. They can absolutely lose their jobs. They should lose their jobs in circumstances like this. And while it may not be actionable civilly or criminally because the comments were not directed at the child, there are ramifications in social media, and they're finally coming to roost, at least for these guys. If you want to put yourself out there like that, you can lose your job, you can lose the respect of your peers. Your own daughters are going to maybe wonder one day why you were such a jerk and said something like that about somebody else's daughter. So absolutely you can, and absolutely you should.
You know, there was comments that some of those comments are so bad, and the daughter of Schilling is 17 at the time, senior in high school, and as a minor, that theoretically, if you have an aggressive or ambitious DA, they could have pursued some charges, criminal charges of that.
Cases like that are being brought now.
And imagine, and we've had cases, Jimmy, where people, and you worked in a DA office too, young girls with self-image problems, they've killed themselves over some of the comments that these trolls do.
Absolutely.
Where does this go from you could lose your job to you could be looking at criminal charges?
Well, I think that the standard issues such as there's got to be demonstrated an intent to actually carry it out, an ability to carry it out. I think bringing criminal charges, especially when they're not directed at the person, here they were directed at Schilling in response to his tweet. I think criminal charges are difficult to be brought. I mean, you have endangering the welfare of a child, you have harassment statutes, but again, they have to be directed at the child. So I don't know that
there are cases that are finding that if you post it on somebody else's Facebook page and there's some possibility that one of their friends could see it, I just read one of these cases last week, criminal charges will lie. And the Supreme Court case that was argued in December that's going to be decided by June will settle some of this stuff, at least federally, whether there has to be the intent requirement.
I hope in many ways this opens Pandora's box and that this veil of anonymity, people think they can say whatever they want without ramifications, but also how many privacy cases we talked about. Now all of a sudden providers that have created these forums, more and more they're not being allowed to say, hey, I just create basically the town hall, people are going to do what they want in it. They're giving over addresses, they're giving over finding out information, they're going directly not just to employers, but we've even seen people go to the front doors to some of these people when they find out and they confront the person directly. And I think, you know, as a parent here, and there's somebody saying about one of our kids.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right, you know? So,
well, that's what he did digitally, he outed them.
That's right.
And I think it's more good than bad, but I think it's opened up yet another whole new window here in the 21st digital century. All right. When we come back, we're going to put the guys to my right on the hot seats, and these guys will have a field day grilling them. Here's the debate. Could NSA leaker Edward Snowden, who wants to come back to the U.S., what kind of punishment should he be looking at? His attorney says Snowden is ready to return if he gets a fair trial and a fair deal. Should the U.S. go easy on Snowden or throw the book at him? We're going to hear oral arguments for and against a harsh penalty from two of the attorneys on our panel when we come back. Stay with us.